see, this is my life. It always will be. There's nothing else. Just us. And the cameras. And those wonderful people out there in the dark.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Out There in the Dark. As always, my name is Tom Alexander, and no.
Do that one again, man. Wow, you took a pause and everything. You didn't even say the whole show. You went like, welcome to, what the hell is this again? Out There in the Dark.
Yeah.
Fuck it. Anyway, nobody cares.
With me, as always, is Azed Majid. Hi, Azed.
Hi. How's it going?
Oh, pretty good.
Yeah?
Pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow,
Well,
you sound very happy for, the times we're living in right now.
Well, how else can I be?
That's a little psychotic, I would say. Isn't it?
You got to find your joy. Where's your joy, Azed?
Oh, my God. No. What are you, Kamala Harris? She's a loser.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. I voted for her, though.
Stay on topic.
I'm an American citizen,
That's true.
right?
Yeah. Stay on topic.
Wow. Yeah, because we really need, in this world right now, what we really need is a retrospective of Jim Jarmush movies.
We do. Thank you. And it's funny you should say that because...
I'm being 100% serious.
Yes. So today we're going to be talking about one of the great American independent filmmakers, Jim Jarmush.
Mm-hmm. It's Jarmush, right?
Jarmush.
Not Jarmush.
No.
Which I've heard a lot of people say Jarmush.
No, just me.
No, I've heard other people say Jarmush too.
That's strange.
I think Umar says Jarmush. It's funner to say Jarmush.
It is. It's a lot funner. It's a nice affectation.
Yeah. But yeah, so yes, we are talking about Jim Jarmush, and I'm going to say that first we're going to just give a little brief read of both of us are going to give a little critical assessment and talk about him for people who may not know him that well. So who wants to go first on that?
Well, I mean, he's certainly one of the iconic fathers of American independent cinema. He's had a very long career, starting out in the early 1980s, and is typified by a very distinct style, themes. Yeah, some of his more famous films are Down by Law, Ghost Dog: The Way of the Samurai, Broken Flowers with Bill Murray. He's worked with Bill Murray a number of times, I think.
Yep.
So
that's kind of a basic overview, I guess, or did you have something a little bit more like personal to kind of relay?
Definitely. I mean, when I was a teenager trying to sort of get a handle on cinema, which I had an early passion for, I distinctly remember watching on TV for the first time Stranger Than Paradise, which was Jim Jarmush's second film, and I was completely blown away.
Right away, the first time
Right
you saw
away.
it.
I was just like, what is this? This is such a strange film in black and white, and each scene is one shot.
Yeah.
Spaced out with these black frames, and I'd never seen anything like it, and I just thought it was hilarious and deeply moving, and yeah, I was blown away. That was my first experience with Jarmush.
Cool. Yeah, so interesting. I was around when, like, in film school when Stranger Than Paradise was making the rounds, and so people were talking about that, and it had immediate buzz, right? And so yeah, he was like, and he's always kind of occupied that space of being New York punk, sort of punk, post-punk kind of character, living, sort of like hanging out in the, New York underground.
Yeah,
right?
he was contemporaries with Iggy Pop and Lou Reed and
yeah,
those
he's
guys.
just after those guys, but just like
they were all friends.
They were friends, yeah, but he was like the younger, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and he was, he was like, he's an interesting like lifestyle, like his where he grew up and stuff in New York. Outside of New York. He was from. See, now I can't remember. That's why you're not supposed to smoke a big fat blunt just before you come on air.
Right? Minnesota or Ohio?
Right, Azed?
Ohio.
That's
Yeah.
right. Okay. And this is always the case. Like, guys like Jim Jarmush, they come from small towns, right? They grow up in these kind of...
It's like a David Lynch.
Exactly,
Yeah.
And they come to New York, they come to these big cities, and they actually define that city, with their perspective.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think what my take on Jim Jarmusch is that, yeah, I knew about him then. I liked his movies then. I always went to see them in theaters and all that stuff. And, they were always great. But, in researching for this episode, I actually rewatched, well, first of all, I had missed a whole bunch of his later films. So like I went back and watched those. And that's like Only Lovers Left Alive and The Dead Don't Die and Patterson and those were the ones I sort of had bypassed. And it's interesting, you just sort of like lose track. You're like, well, I'm not gonna keep up with every artist, every single movie, no. Right? But I was really glad that we did this. At first I was kind of dreading it. I was like, I've already seen most of these, blah, blah, blah. But I really found watching them this time, I rewatched a whole bunch, and I rewatched Dead Man and Stranger Than Paradise. And he's really been elevated in my estimation now. Like, mm-hmm. I think I always thought he was a great, cool, underground New York filmmaker, but I never realized to what extent. I mean, I knew this was there, but I never realized to what extent he's such a universalist kind of humanitarian filmmaker, right? Mm-hmm. Like his movies are really deep, they're really deep. They're about something. They're sort of, for me, the take for me is that he's often compared to like the what they call the Transcendental group, right? Oeuvre, Bresson, Dreyer, and I know that he has talked himself about being influenced by those guys, and it's very clear. You can see it in his work.
Especially his earlier films, when he was not having big movie stars in them.
Yes,
really.
Yeah, that's true, because there was a formalist sort of way he shot films and stuff that had a kind of Ozu-like feel to them at times. But I would say what's interesting to me is even in his later work and when his style changes and stuff, his thematic is very similar to, again, what is like called transcendental filmmaking. And the reason they call it that is because it deals with universal human themes, right? Mm-hmm. And so in that sense, they break all language barriers, all code barriers, you know what I mean? Because they get to the heart of what it means to be a human being. It doesn't matter about your identity, nothing like that, right?
And there's a transcendental style as well that
that's what I'm saying.
Matches too.
Yeah.
So theme, absolutely.
He's doing the same, like his movies have that same richness is what I'm saying. Yeah. And you'll see it in the fact that like there's a lot of rituals in his movies, right? Mm-hmm. People do things like Coffee and Cigarettes is the apotheosis of that, right?
See, I haven't seen that since it played at TIFF like a bajillion years ago, but you recently rewatched it.
I did, and what's interesting is the movie is called Coffee and Cigarettes, and it's a bunch of vignettes of different what do you call two-act plays, like sort of like two actors sitting, two-handers, exactly, and sometimes there's one person, right? Sometimes there's three, but basically they're just sitting in a bar having coffee. In this cafe, having coffee and cigarettes and having talks, right? So there are these vignettes. I remember seeing it the first time, and it was like, yeah, that's fun. It's a lot of fun, right? But this time, what I noticed, and this is really important for his work, because it's all through it, is that the movie is actually called Coffee and Cigarettes, and in a sense, the movie is not about the people. It's about the ritual,
right,
of what coffee and cigarettes means, right? It's like Coffee and Cigarettes is about, an intimate get together where you're there to talk, you're there to converse, and it's cool, and there's an underground feeling to it, and it's about a certain alienation and all that kind of stuff, right? And that's really important because he uses the same way that Ozu uses objects in his movies. He does the same thing. He's very focused on mundane objects and things in his movies that then sort of tend to imply an immanence, a kind of presence, right? And those characters are kind of, all of his characters are outsiders. They're very alienated. Often they're vagabonds, or they're low level hustlers, or they're actual foreigners from another country, or they're kind of like awkward, strange people, right?
Yeah, they don't fit in their environment quite.
Yeah.
I think for me the apotheosis of that would be, say, Dead Man, which I had never seen before, and I watched it for the first time.
It's a masterpiece.
2 weeks ago. And it's a total masterpiece.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite Jarmusch film. I think I have to go with Stranger Than Paradise, just because of how it affected me when I was younger. But Dead Man is like unbelievable.
Yeah,
And
no,
it's
it
this,
is.
Johnny Depp's character is completely at odds with his environment.
Yeah, well,
But he's traveling with nobody, the indigenous guy played by Gary Farmer,
so great.
who is so great,
Yeah.
and who...
He's actually the star of that movie.
That's true.
Yeah,
You're right.
yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, that's what you remember the most is him, right?
Yeah. Stupid fucking
Stupid
white
man.
man.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's. I know what you mean. Like, there's with Dead Man, it stands out in his work, even though it's got all the other it's got the elements of almost all of his other films, but it's. I think it represents a moment in his work where he starts to shift more into poetic language than in the kind of more Antonioni style that he kind of has, in the earlier films. Like Stranger Than Paradise, it has that kind of, art film look.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But with Dead Man, the film itself becomes very poetic, right? And
it's a lot more mainstream-ish in
Yeah.
a way. Like, and it was a bigger budget film, obviously, with a big movie star, Johnny
Yeah.
Depp. It was, Miramax distributing it. And apparently Harvey Weinstein wanted to recut it completely.
Of course, because it was boring.
Which
right?
Jarmusch said no.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of people. I remember watching it. I remember watching it once with a guy, a friend of ours from City TV. We decided to have a movie night. Each of us picked a movie, and this guy he hated Dead Man.
Oh, I know people who hated it.
Yeah, and it's like I've met people who really. Smart people, good taste in movies too, right? But they just like I don't get it. It's boring, whatever. And it's like I get that too, but oh come on, man! Like the guy is dead from the beginning. Okay, like it's like clear, that like when you see Crispin Glover, right? And it's just like whoa,
It's like already on the train to hell or whatever.
Yeah, machine.
Well, what I've heard is one popular theory is that he's alive at the beginning, but it's when he gets shot by Gabriel Byrne that he's dead.
Right.
And then the rest of it is his journey into the afterlife.
Except that they talk about him being dead on the train.
Yeah.
Right. And also the train you don't know when that's happened. Like I know it's sort of chronological when he arrives in Machine, right? Yeah. But the chronology, after a while, you lose complete sense of the time of when things are happening, right? Mm-hmm. Like, because if he's, like, what's this journey he's on? Where is he going after that? He's just wandering, right? And because he's really kind of hiding out, doesn't want to get taken in, right? But, yeah, somebody came in and shut the door.
Well, that happens.
Yeah.
But I find the style of Dead Man to be so, like the look of it, like I think it's Robbie Mueller's cinematography.
Yeah, it's always Robbie Mueller.
And it's so high contrast, black and white. It is just so gorgeous. And I feel like when I was watching Dead Man, which again I hadn't seen before, so I was looking at it with fresh eyes, and so I was able to look at it thinking about the stuff that came after it. I was clearly so influenced by the film, and it made me wonder. I think Dead Man might be his most influential film, thinking about like the films of Kelly Reichardt, for example, or a TV show like Reservation Dogs. It's that kind of like surprisingly anachronistic look at indigenous people and it's just again the interplay between these characters and their environment, the outsider status. I mean, I think that really struck.
Well, what's interesting is that so in Dead Man, his character's name is William Blake. Obviously, there's a poet named William Blake. So what's interesting is nobody knows William Blake, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a connection that he's making to the poetry of William Blake and its universal appeal.
Yeah.
Right? So there's really this idea of a universal appeal. That's really important to understanding how to, I think, for me, to watch Jarmusch's films. Because when people say, well, I don't understand what it's about, that's what it's about.
Exactly.
It's about this journey where, there's all these, he just comes across all these characters who are just, sad, kind of lonely, psychotic, but they're all kind of like kind of sick, right? And like except for the Gary Farmer character, who's helpful,
sensitive,
basically saves
smart.
his life. Yeah, smart,
easily the
funny,
smartest person.
Yeah,
very funny.
Yeah, so like he's the humanity in the movie, right? So we kind of went off track a little bit here. I think we were going to go sort of do a read of him and then go into his movies chronologically, but we kind of got a little bit off track talking about Dead Men. But yeah, I think I just want to sort of give a wrap up of that idea that he's a very important filmmaker, and I think it's going to happen that in a few years he's going to have like one of those like big resurgences, like with with a lot of filmmakers. He's going to become like special Oscar and like the whole thing, right?
Oh yeah,
he'll be old man Jarmush, and he'll like
he's like in his 70s now.
I know, he still looks amazing though because he's got that great look, right?
I know.
Yeah,
he's ageless.
Yeah, he's one of the coolest looking directors of all time. I have to say, him and Lynch. Like Lynch also was.
Lynch
cool.
had a great look.
Yeah.
Well, the great ones have great looks.
It's all the hair, right?
Godard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, did you want to just go chronologically from? I mean, a lot of people think that Stranger Than Paradise is his first film because it was his breakout, but he actually made a feature film a couple of years before called Permanent Vacation, which I don't think you've seen.
I haven't seen it, but I've seen a documentary about the making of it.
Yeah, you know what, guys? It's okay. Yeah. It's not great.
Yeah.
It's very low. It's a very low budget film. Too low budget. Like it really creaks along.
That was the whole problem because I saw the documentary. Basically, he couldn't achieve what he wanted to achieve because they never had enough money. They had no permits. They were running and gunning the whole thing, right? And what you see between Permanent Vacation and his first real, I guess, feature, Stranger Than Paradise, is this seismic shift in style, right? And you see that, okay, when he had John. Okay, well, this is an interesting thing. We're moving on to Stranger Than Paradise. The interesting thing now is I've heard this from a couple of people, and I've read this somewhere too, that John Lurie claims very much that Stranger Than Paradise was all his idea, right? And I've heard Jarmush also say that the original concept was John Lurie's idea.
Okay,
like. Because he's Hungarian, right? Lurie is Hungarian, and he said, well, "How about we do a movie about my cousin coming to visit me?" And and I'm like, whatever. And so that was all his idea. But now the question is like, okay, now Jarmusch took it and kind of made a kind of story out of it, and took that idea.
Yeah.
I don't know how much was Lurie's and how much was Jarmusch's, but my friend Pedro told me last night, actually, he told me that he read John Lurie's biography.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because John Lurie, do you know anything about John Lurie?
Not much. I know he's a musician.
Well, no, but he's like a huge figure he was best friends with Basquiat, and he was in that like soup, like he's
in that world.
He's considered like he's kind of considered like a musician's musician, he's like considered like a great musician, right? And like he had a group called Lounge Lizards, and his brother is also a composer and stuff. It's
right.
Like there's a genius in there somewhere, right? So what Pedro told me was that there's a lot of contention because now they hate each other apparently, John Lurie.
Oh no!
Well, because he says that he thinks that Lurie has accused Jarmusch of stealing a lot from him. Like a lot of his style, a lot of his stories, a lot of, stuff like that. So, because anyway, I don't know if any of this is true, so I don't want to put it out there as misinfo, but I am just saying
everything we say is misinformation.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Even welcome to the show. Yeah.
But you know what? It's a masterpiece. It is still my favorite Jarmusch film, Stranger Than Paradise. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Undoubtedly.
Yeah.
It's yeah. I don't know if I'd say masterpiece in the same way that I would Dead Man. And that's
they're both incredible.
No, but there's a difference, right? The reason why I say that is just because I think the one thing about Stranger Than Paradise is, to me, it seems a little. The style is a little too on the nose, a little copying other filmmakers, which he later doesn't do as much, right? Like I feel
Who do you think he's copying?
Like he's very Aki Kaurismäki. He's very Ozu. You know, there's a little bit of Antonioni. The way he shoots, like there's even some Lynch in there, right? Like the way he shoots Crumbling City, like everything's of a
Eraserhead.
Yeah. There's a little bit of that, but I just see there's a kind of pastiche to it, which is original, but I just see a little bit more of the derivation of his style.
I see that a little bit,
which I think is fair at that stage of filmmaker, right?
To me, he still makes it his own. It's still such a wholly original style and characters that, for my mind, those influences are there, but they're not derivative in the same.
No, it's not derivative to the point where you could say it's in any way a detriment. But I just think it keeps it from being a masterpiece. Okay. if we're gonna get granular about what masterpiece means, right? I mean, I don't know.
I don't throw the word around lightly.
Oh, very creepy.
But it's incredible, and we also forget how funny Jarmusch is. Like
very super dry.
I just love like the anti in.
Oh, John Lurie in that is fucking hilarious. Yeah. Like, because he's such a grouchy guy, right? Mm. When he's like, don't talk to me in Hungarian, talk to me in English, But I think he's such a magnetic character, John Lurie, right?
Yeah.
He had a TV show as well, called Fishing with John, which was hilarious.
I never saw it.
Oh, I've seen.
Did he have one, like a painting one too?
He has a painting one that's also really good. Yeah, it's really good. Those are really good shows.
Check them out.
Yeah, and he's just this think about it. He's this beanpole kind of like tall, skinny, very strange looking, kind of handsome but kind of weird looking head. Like big lips, like strange looking guy, but kind of good looking too, right? And stylish at the same time.
Especially in Down by Law, he plays a pimp.
Yeah, he does play a pimp in Down by Law. He's
got the swagger.
Yeah, but then so he's amazing, and then of course the woman who plays the Esther, is that her name? Esther.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. What's her name? Ballant.
Esther Ballant.
Yeah, I'm gonna look it up.
Oh, and Richard Edson, right?
Yeah.
So that was his first film, I think.
No.
I think so. Because before that, he was a musician.
Yeah, right.
He was the original drummer for Sonic Youth.
Yeah, so the actress's name is Esther Ballant. But it's Eva in the movie. Her name is Eva.
Right.
She's fantastic. Like a performance like that comes along once every 50 years, right? Just her deadpan. She's so adorable.
Screaming Jay Hawkins is my man.
Yeah, so bug off.
So bug off.
Yeah, and it's amazing because that song is "I Put a Spell on You," and that's exactly what she does to them, right? Yeah. And that's the interesting thing is because he does. Jarmusch is great. He doesn't do that thing where it's like immediately the cousin comes in and there's a shot of her looking hot, and then they're like, oh, of course, you're setting up, for some kind of love thing to happen. It's so not on the surface at all. Like they're not acknowledging anything like that. I mean,
the Richard Edson character is she's kind of cute.
She's cute, yeah.
And he's trying to be a little bit flirty for 30 seconds, but then he gives up.
Yeah, he's almost like saying the thing. He's saying the elephant in the room. Yeah, right. He's saying it out loud,
which his character does actually. It's kind of his thing.
But he's the one who says let's take her to the what? And he's like no, just no. Right? Because he's still kind of thinking of her as this burdensome cousin he's got to look after, right? And then, of course, that scene where he buys her the dress is fucking classic, right? Because she goes, the way she just goes, yeah, it's a very ugly dress. And she goes, you like this dress? He goes, yeah, I bought it, right? And then the TV dinner.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
You got your meat.
Yeah.
You got your veg.
This is how we eat over here. But that gets back to that ritual thing I was talking about, right?
Yeah.
Because she's just looking at it like, that is fucking gross, right? And he's like, no, this is how we eat here, right? There's some, it's so funny in that way because it's just behavior based, right? It's like, those characters are naive and silly in some ways, but they're very much need to connect. There's this kind of like desire to connect. They're alone. They're alone, right?
That's really exploded in Down by Law, his next film. Right? Where
I like the way that you kind of like, it's going too long. Let's push it.
well,
Azed's on his roll.
I got to do something to like rein you in. So, but Down by Law,
a tranquilizer gun would be the most.
I'll remember that next time. But yeah, I mean, you've got the Roberto Benigni character in Down by Law, who's a complete innocent.
Yeah, Down by Law is another incremental step forward, I think. Right. Like I like Down by Law better than I like Stranger Than Paradise.
Oh, not me. No,
I get that.
I have a few problems with Down by Law. It starts to like lose it in the third act, kind of. Yeah, it didn't really.
No, absolutely wrong. That's okay, Tom. Tom, we'll talk later, okay?
Oh, for God's sakes!
Like
don't take it personally.
I don't know how you. No, I'm gonna take it personally. God damn it!
But.
No,
most of the movie is flawless.
The whole movie
the
is...
music,
the movie
Tom
is
Waits.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful movie. It's a funny... Holy fuck, it's funny.
It's so funny.
And again, you have your three completely unrelated characters, but they're all related because they are all kind of marginal, live by night, kind of, petty thieves, hustlers, and, that kind of thing, right? And they all... So the story is that Tom Waits gets suckered into, he's a guy just sitting on the street, basically, and he gets suckered into driving a car from one end of the town to the other, and there's a dead body in the trunk. He doesn't know about it, but of course he gets pulled over. He's the fall guy. John Lurie is a pimp who goes up to see a new girl that he's going to take on.
Which was set up by
another pimp, yeah. And then, of course, when he's in there, he doesn't see the girl at first because she's lying in bed and she's kind of hidden away. And then when she turns around, she's this like child,
like 10 years old,
with like tacky prostitute makeup on.
And then the Vice Squad comes in.
And then the Vice Squad comes in. He's, I got set up, right? And then, so then the next thing is you see those two, Tom Waits and John Lurie, are in a cell together.
Yeah, this is all in New Orleans.
In New Orleans, yeah. And they clash right away, right? They clash, but then they have a couple of scenes where they don't clash, right?
Yeah.
Where he does this, well, this is Lee Baby Sims. I'm coming to you from, because he said he was on the, and then, he's like, oh, that was you, and he goes, yeah, you heard of me, and he goes, no. There's a lot of that where it's like there's competition.
And you're not sure how much time is really passing, except for, I think, if I remember correctly, Tom Waits is marking days.
And he goes, don't do that, man. It makes the days go longer, right? Yeah, and then after a few scenes, all of a sudden Roberto Benigni gets thrown into the mix, right?
He's trying to learn English.
He's hilarious. Yeah, he says, not enough room to
swing a cat.
Swing a dead cat, yeah. Hey, Jack, you have some fighter. But, it's funny. Those things are throwaway, like when he says, Jack, right? It sounds like he's like, okay, the thing is he's just trying to learn their names. But the fact that they're Jack, Zach, you know what I mean? Like that, the fact that he keeps saying it like that, it's like, yeah, they are doubles, right? They're doubles, and that's purposefully done, right? And that's why they can't stand each other in some ways, right? Because they kind of are doubles of each other.
Well, again, these characters are all marginalized, and they're all, out of sync with their environment and their world.
But they're painfully alone. Yeah. Like these are characters that have been, like, you can imagine the trauma of these characters in their past lives. Right?
Well, there's a breakup scene with Ellen Barkin.
God, that's such a great scene.
Yeah. And then
not the shoes.
And then John Lurie is his girlfriend, quote unquote, is one of his prostitutes. So,
But there's like, you can see these characters are very, very, very hurt characters.
Oh, yeah.
And then when they get together, there's a childishness that takes over. You know, like they become like children.
You screama,
we all scream for ice cream. And then when they escape, then escape, and then it's a thing of them on the run, sort of. And at the end, it becomes a very surreal kind of ending, because there's all of a sudden they spy this like cabin in the woods, and it's
an Italian.
It's
widow.
an Italian widow. You know, what's her name? Nicoletta
Braschi.
Yeah, and of course, because he's Italian, right, and she's Italian, so now it's like his perfect mate is just waiting for him there, and they stay there overnight, and then they part. Beautiful ending of that movie.
The very end is beautiful.
When it's like the two roads in the path, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of Walt Whitman thrown in that movie, because he says, "Hey, Jack, you know these leaves of grass, Walt Whitman, right?" And then he says, "Walt Whitman," in Italian, right? Like, so Walt Whitman comes up a lot, right? Remember later he goes like, "Why don't you ask Walt Whitman?" Right? So it's interesting. It's interesting that, you know, this thing about Walt Whitman keeps coming up in it, because I think it really speaks to, again, you know, this journey that these characters are on towards a kind of, you know, it's an internal journey as well, right? It's a journey to themselves, because they find, like, Roberto finds it. It's like fantastical, right?
Yeah.
And then at the end, what's interesting is the two guys, you know, the Jack and Zach, they switch coats, right? At the very end,
right.
Because they goes, "Hey, you going?" Because they make fun of each other's clothes first. He goes like, "Oh, what are you going squirrel hunting?" But, you know, like, so then they look at each other and go, "You switch," and then they switch coats, and then they're at this bend in the road, a fork in the road, and they go in separate directions. But the last thing you see is, as they're both walking off in separate directions, not on a split road, they both look at each other and put out their hands and wave goodbye. Yeah. So it shows that they actually they actually have some kind of connection, some kind of like feelings for each other, but they can't. Their pride, you know, they're sort of like they're not their pride, but the trauma puts them in their defensive bubble.
Yeah.
And so they can't really connect, right? Whereas Roberto Benigni doesn't have any of that.
No, he's just this walking id.
Yeah, like, he's also walking love, right? Yeah. He's like my friend, like everything's, you know, like, and these guys are just like, they can't do that, right? Like they can't actually show vulnerability, right? And I think that's what the movie sort of gets to, right?
Yeah, and that's another theme that runs through Jarmusch, is the whole people having these tenuous connections, or these insecure or hesitant
alienated
connections.
Yeah,
you know, and that's in his next two films, Mystery Train and Night on Earth. That's even more exploded, because in Mystery Train you've got these, you know, 3 different scenes happening,
right?
All at the same time,
all in Memphis.
And then in Night on Earth, it's cab drivers all around the world at the exact same time.
Right.
So they're not connected. And in Mystery Train, they sort of glance by each other.
Yeah, and there's a connection, because the Nicoletta Braschi character, when she stays in a hotel room, she has that girl with her.
Yeah.
She talks about my boyfriend with the British accent, but he's like, you know, dangerous and stuff like that. Yeah. That's Joe Strummer
at the end of the film.
And that's the gun that goes off that they all hear, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So they
run into Steve Buscemi earlier.
Yeah.
Who's a good friend of the Joe Strummer character.
He's funny. Yeah, he's funny. And Mystery Train, I rewatched. I had seen it in the theater when it came out. So I didn't remember it that well, but I watched it again, and I really liked it.
Yeah,
like,
I hadn't seen it before, and I really liked it too.
I really liked it. Like I remember at the first time seeing it, going, oh, I don't know, like, you know,
I liked it a lot more.
And all analogy films are really hit and miss, right? Like when not analogy, you know, when they have like a carousel film, I mean, right?
Right.
Different stories like that, right? But this one is so great because again, all of the themes of the outsider, the foreigner, the down and outer, the marginalized, right? You know, all of that stuff is now, you know, very, very much contrasted now with these figures who come to, you know, or in Memphis or come to Memphis. Some, like the two guys in the beginning, the Asian kids, they come because they're like, you know, they're like ironic, kind of like
she loves Elvis.
Pop art,
He loves Carl
culture.
Perkins.
Yeah.
Carl
Perkins,
to the Sun
exactly.
Records.
Yeah, everything's. Why don't
It's
you
like
have
the
Carl?
worst tour ever?
Yeah. Oh, I know. That's great but she's moving and they're all moving with her.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fascinating scene. Yeah, his take on it, again, the look of America in his movies is a really big part of Mystery Train, because in Mystery Train, it's the most, the one you think about the most, I think, when you see those street scenes at night, especially, is like Nighthawks at the diner.
Sure. Right?
Because there's nobody else on the street. Unless there's only who needs to be there for the scene.
Yeah,
there's no extras, no cars, nothing, and that kind of like Nighthawks at the diner thing, and does put you in the mind of Hopper, and Hopper is all about the same themes.
Yeah.
You know, loneliness, like alienation, a kind of inner loneliness that all of us feel, because whether you have people around you or not, right? You know, ultimately you're kind of alone. You're in your own head, right? And how can you connect to other people? How can you actually connect? Is that really possible? Or is it all just ersatz? Is it just us kind of like going through the motions? So, you know, there's a lot of that in his movies. That's the existential sort of dread in it, you know, or whatever, that gives it its heftiness. And yet there's a poetry in it. Again, there's the, you know, to talk about the next film after that would be...
with Night on Earth, which
would be which is similar. I
it's
thought
a
that one.
similar
I think that's
idea.
my least favorite.
Yeah, it doesn't totally work for a bunch of reasons. I think I think the first of his films to have like a big, well-known, famous cast.
Yeah,
the writers, the first cab driver, and Jenna Rollins, who's great in the film actually.
Yeah,
Winona Ryder less so, I found, but.
Yeah, she was a bit of a cartoon, I guess.
But yeah, you know, I love the idea of it, but in this one, much like you said earlier, the problem you have with these kinds of films is that some parts of Night on Earth don't work at all.
Yeah.
You know, the
Helsinki part, you think?
The Helsinki part, not quite.
Yeah, it just seems like that's
a very charismatic.
Yeah, that's a charismatic
thing.
Movie. Yeah, it's an homage almost. Right?
The Rome one is good only because of Benigni is hilarious.
Yeah, but it's a bit like too silly almost.
Yeah, it is.
You know.
Yeah,
it's almost like a parody of those Italian style movies. I think that's what he's doing. He's sort of, when he goes to different cities. He's New York, Paris.
New York was my favorite one.
Yeah, Paris. Then there's Rome. Then there's Helsinki. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what he's doing is he's changing the film's style a little bit,
slightly
in each city to give a sense of what their filmmaking style, their general style is like, right? That one I found it. I'd like to watch it again, and it wasn't able to rewatch it, so I
have never seen it before, so
but I don't remember I remember at the time even thinking this is okay, right?
Yeah,
like good stuff, but just not enough of a coherent sort of through line, I guess, or something. And then after that, we have something like
then Dead Man.
So then after
Night on Earth was a few years later was Dead Man in 1995,
which again was like we've talked a lot about it already. Just a masterpiece. Definitely. Everything about it is amazing. The cinematography is just out of this fucking world.
It kind of takes all of the ideas that he's been coming up with and puts them in perfectly.
Yeah.
And it's not episodic in the way that his previous few films had been. So Stranger Than Paradise was like one scene is one shot and they're separate in black.
Yep.
Down by Law is like a 3-act structure, very specific. He's also a very literary filmmaker.
Yes.
In the sense of like he uses poetry a lot in all of his films, or in many of his films. And uses like a novelistic structure a lot of the time.
Yeah,
chapters,
absolutely,
and acts, and of course, Mystery Train is like I think 3 stories. Night on Earth is 4 stories.
Yeah,
but
it's like
Dead Man is a whole narrative.
It's his novel.
Yeah,
yeah. Those ones are kind of short story compendiums.
Yeah, and the greatest cast like ever
in Dead Man.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
everybody.
Yeah.
Robert Mitchum,
Iggy Pop. Yeah. Yeah, Robert Mitchum, exactly. Crazy part. And even, like we said, Crispin Glover and stuff. Yeah, I think we've said what we want, what everything there is. The only thing I would mention about Dead Men that we didn't talk about was the soundtrack, which is fantastic.
Oh my God!
Right?
Of course, Neil Young. Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah, so Neil Young apparently just watched the movie.
Yeah.
And played along, and it's like a solo electric guitar soundtrack, and it's just it brings up a kind of like Sergio Leone feel, but because it's just guitar like that, it's very lonely again, very kind of like Lonesome Cowboy kind of feeling.
Well, ostensibly, I guess Dead Man is technically kind of a Western.
It is a Western.
It is a Western. So yeah, to use the Morricone idea, where you're using this very strange musical score that just somehow fits perfectly.
Yeah, it is the theme, right?
Yeah.
Like, you get it. Yeah. Just you can talk, we could do like a whole 10 shows on Dead Men.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of different layers, a lot of different meanings, right? Like there's a lot of subtext in his movie, in Dead Men, about, parents and children, and about, breaking the taboos between parents and children. Like, well, there's a lot about parents and children, just like the idea of his parents being dead. He's an orphan. And then there's the one assassin who the other guy says, yeah, he fucked his parents.
And then ate them.
Right? Yeah.
This Lance Henriksen.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of...
And the Gary Farmer character. Right?
Also
he loses his
community.
Out of his completely.
Yeah, exactly. He's a total outsider, right? So these are people who have not just outsiders, like cool outsiders. They're people without any country, without any identity, without any...
They're totally adrift.
They're non-people, right? In any sense that we understand people. And I think he does that on purpose, because he wants to strip the human being down to their essential being. Not anything nothing on them, nothing like their clothes, their speech, their whatever. Nothing can actually define them. Right?
And that becomes even more pronounced in his next film, I think, Ghost Dog.
Oh,
which
yeah.
I love. I love Ghost Dog.
I remember. I wasn't able to rewatch it. I have seen it, but and it's great. I think it's great, but I'd love to see it again, because it does have like a more of a structure of a gangster film, right? Of course, it's Jarmusch, so it's not. It's like always a take on.
I mean, Dead Man is his Western.
Yeah.
Ghost Dog is his gangster movie.
Yeah.
Which, in the same way that I guess Killing of a Chinese Bookie was Cassavetes' gangster movie.
Yeah.
It's very weird.
Yeah. It doesn't hit the same tropes that, it does and it doesn't. Like in Ghost Dog, there's that scene where he actually goes into the mob. They're all playing cards. Yeah. Yeah. And they're all like kind of typical mobsters, kind of Italian.
Not
guys.
really. I thought no. If you rewatch it, they're very strange. They're super kind of dumb, especially the Henry Silva character.
Yeah.
And they spend a lot of time watching cartoons.
That's right. That's right.
And then the head of the family is obsessed with Flavor Flav. So he's like singing Cold Lampin' before he gets shot in the eye.
Right.
And but yeah, the whole it's the Forrest Whitaker character who is the ultimate outsider here, where he seems to have no past, no connections with anything. He's a pure samurai. He reads the samurai books. He's got a big katana sword, and he just lives by this code. And you want to talk about characters who have routines and
there's the ice cream truck and
his best friend doesn't speak English, and
I think the fact that it's Forrest Whitaker and it's a black character at the center of the film is really important, right? That he connects with the samurai, right? Culture is very. He loves that idea that identity is not something that you are born into; it's something that you find for yourself, right? Because far too many people rest very easily on, I was born in this country, so I'm this.
Right.
Or my parents believe in this religion, so I'm this, right? Or everyone around me does this, so I do this, right? I'm not being judgmental. I'm just saying that's what most of us do.
Yeah, we all
That's
do it.
how we take a sense of belonging to our communities, right?
And our identity comes from
But-
that.
But like some of us, like for example, I'm a Pakistani background, right? But I grew up here, right? So yeah, my parents were not very strict. Like they weren't strict Muslims. Like we didn't, very secular household, right?
Yeah.
And 70s, very integrating, very Jewish-like in that sense. Like people wanted to integrate, right? So from my perspective, I feel like I don't belong either place, right? I mean, this is my home. Canada's my home. Toronto's my home. But I can't 100% feel connected here, no matter how long I live here, right? And I can't feel connected to my ancestral past either, right? So I kind of have this need to find an identity that is outside of those two confines. Sure. And so it becomes things like this, movies, right? Yeah. So like I will connect with anybody who's into movies, right? Except maybe like Hitler. I don't think he had good taste in movies anyway. But you know what I'm saying, right? There's that the identity thing is actually
our connections through other external habits, hobbies,
meaningful constructs. Like religion is one thing, but film is a kind of religion too. I wouldn't say film alone, but art, right? Art can be in many ways the thing that is defining the way you
literature. People find community
it's the lens through which you look at life, and you get a lot of your meaning from it, right?
Of course.
So, I mean, people have a tendency to downplay things like art as just being kind of like a superfluous or a kind of addendum to everyday life. Right?
Yeah, like it's not as important as
exactly.
business or.
And I think Jarmush's theme is that these people actually are living a life that's got some meaning to it, like Forrest Whitaker. He's got a code. He's got a discipline.
He's incredibly skilled at what he does.
Yeah, but that's all because he has the code. He has the samurai code, right? And the code is really important for people, but it's a code that you again have to find, right? It's something that has to speak to you.
Yeah. Rewatching Ghost Dog, I also noticed that his master, who's sort of a mid-level Italian mobster, he's almost like a samurai too, in the sense that he has loyalty to his family, which are the mob, and he's an outsider. He doesn't quite fit. All these mobsters are the typical looking Goodfellas type, except this particular character has got this hangdog face. He seems very sad all the time. He seems more like he's kind of a non-actor, I think, too. I don't know where they found him. He's incredible.
Right.
But and then at the end, because Forrest Whitaker kills all the mobsters, spoiler,
nice.
He then his old master then has to kill him.
Right.
Because he has to avenge his masters.
Right.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's an incredible film.
Yeah. And then there's the pigeons as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, a great one. I really like that one too. I'd like to see it again for sure.
And it's also one of his more entertaining, accessible films.
Yeah, and great soundtrack. It was a
huge hit. Yeah, the RZA soundtrack. Yeah.
RZA. There's a lot. He works a lot with the same people. Like, I mean, RZA's been, was in Coffee and Cigarettes, and like Wu-Tang has been involved with a lot of Jim Jarmush stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then they've got the whole Shaolin monk sort of samurai thing.
Exactly. So, and then after, what do we got that comes right after this one? Is it Coffee and Cigarettes?
No, it's maybe it is. Yes, it is. It is Coffee,
yes.
which I did not rewatch. So, like I mentioned earlier, I've only seen it once, and that was back even before it came out when it played at the Toronto Festival.
Right. And what I was saying to you, I think before we started recording, was like I watched it recently again, and I loved it. Yeah. Like I actually loved it. Like I remember thinking it was a lesser Jarmush, kind of like just a fun one-off kind of thing.
Throwaway.
But it, that's just one of those things where the very conceit of the film, in a sense, can kind of throw you off from taking it too seriously. And no, it's very Brechtian, or not Brechtian, but what's his name?
Beckett,
like Beckett, like exactly, like Waiting for Godot or something, right? It has that kind of quality to it. Where like if you and each of the scenarios are they're like great short stories, right? And the coffee.
It's in black and white, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Okay.
It looks beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
And the interesting thing is if you think about it, the name of the movie is Coffee and Cigarettes, right? It has all these big stars in it, like Tilda Swinton is in it. I'm not Kate Blanchett is in it.
Right.
She plays like a dual role, right? She plays She plays herself, and then she plays her cousin, who's like really jealous of her. She comes to this like posh place where she's trying on clothes or whatever, and they have coffee together and whatever, right? But she's talking to herself, and there's Meg White and Jack White in one.
Oh yeah,
and they do he shows her his Tesla coil, right? And and then there's Iggy and Tom Waits, which is hilarious because Tom Waits is like really like suspicious and weird, and they keep and Iggy Pop is like really sweet and like trying to just be free. It's just there's this one with the two African Moroccan, I think they're Moroccan, but
okay.
Yeah, one of them is really famous and I can't remember his name, but they keep saying it's like, well, why did you call me, what's going on, whatever, is everything okay? And he's saying, the other guy keeps saying, yeah, everything's okay, I just wanted to talk to you, I wanted to see you. So they sit there quietly for a long time. These guys, and then it comes out that like these guys have been friends, but they haven't seen each other for a while. And so this one guy has called the other guy to meet him, and so the other guy just can't stop saying, well, there must be something you want to talk to me about. And the other guy's like, no, I just wanted to see you.
Wow.
Right? And then he's like, okay. And then they sit there for a while, and then he's like, no, okay, if you don't want to talk to me, then I'm just going to go, right? It's amazing how he creates this kind of tension between that and, like that whole thing. So there's all these different scenarios in there that have stories and are laden with, meaning. But it's really about the coffee and the cigarettes. It's about the ritual again, like the TV dinner, right? It's like that idea that we do these things like coffee and cigarettes is something that we associate with a certain kind of person, with a certain kind of lifestyle, with a kind of cool, with a kind of like after the bar scene, kind of person, and it speaks to that group, again, that underground, artistic, but also kind of petty criminal, yeah.
Is it also going back to the earlier theme we talked about of finding connection, but it's a very tenuous connection. It's very, because you're talking, again, haven't seen it in a long time, but, so you've got these two people having coffee and cigarettes, and it sounds like they're connecting or not connecting, like the two Moroccan friends.
Exactly, yeah. And I think you're right. I think that the coffee and cigarettes is also a way for people to connect, right? When you sit together, you want to have a smoke, you want to have a coffee, you sit together, you smoke, and you talk, right? I just think that's a fascinating way, because there's no judgment on it, you shouldn't smoke, No. It's like, everybody's like, yeah, I'll have
Did that
one.
judgment happen back then? I mean, this was made in 2003. So,
that judgment's been happening for a long time. But, it's like, whatever. The point is that there is a connection between because there's one scene where there's this really beautiful woman. I think she's French or something, and she's sitting alone, and she's reading, right? And and you can see that the waiter keeps coming over, and is attracted to her, and she's just like silent and just kind of like doesn't give him anything, right?
Right.
And that's it. You just see her smoking, drinking coffee, and writing in the book or something, and that's the whole sequence, right? Yeah. But you see from the attitude and stuff so he's really getting at that ritual of things that people do, like you were saying, things people do to try to connect to each other. But they, it's really the ritual that is the thing that helps you do that, like eating together, right? Or
in Night on Earth, where each sequence is the connection or lack of connection between a cab driver and his passenger.
Exactly, yeah, and then the connection between all those different countries and the lack of connection between them, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so that's a big overarching theme, and I think that's why his movies can speak to anybody, right? But they also turn a lot of people off, I think, because he's always talking in that realm.
Yeah.
Is the next one Patterson?
The next one, no, there's a few. Broken Flowers was his film.
Okay,
after
so
that.
Broken Flowers I didn't rewatch, but I saw it.
I saw it recently for the first time.
Okay.
When I was prepping for this. Not my favorite Jarmusch film. And I think the main, so for those who don't know, Broken Flowers is about Bill Murray, who is some kind of like wealthy guy who gets an anonymous letter that he has a teenage son. And he's also kind of a Don Juan type. So that his best friend, who's his next door neighbor, Jeffrey Wright, who's an amateur sleuth, figures out, if you want to meet the woman who might be the mother, here's the people to go see.
Right. So all these past girlfriends, basically.
So then we're back into the whole Jarmusch style of different chapters in a way, because the rest of the film is him meeting each of these women in these different parts of the United States.
Right. And where you get like sort of snippets of what he's like through them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
it's
hit and miss.
It's good. I thought it was a good movie when I saw it, but
yeah,
it has a cool ending. I remember he's standing on the road, and there's this.
It's a very ambiguous ending. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's that because of that location where there's like a hill going up, and he's like in the middle of this crosswalk, and it's like it's like options everywhere kind of thing, right? And and yet I don't know which way to go, right?
Exactly, because he has also just alienated somebody who he thought might be his son.
Exactly.
And then he sees someone else who is more likely to be his son, but you don't know.
Yeah, because that's the whole thing, because he sees him walking at the after he comes out of that bar or whatever, right? Yeah. I remember that. Yeah, really, really hard hitting ending for sure.
But much of it didn't work for me. I found I was struggling to see the connections between Bill Murray's character and each of these women.
Right.
Who they just seemed like completely different worlds altogether.
Well,
Maybe that was kind of the point, but it didn't work for me.
I don't know. That's why I think one of the big takeaways for me is you really have to watch his movies a couple of times.
Sure.
And you have to kind of go in with a kind of, with an operating system of sorts, because you can really miss. He's really one of the few directors, I would say, that is talking or trying to convey something, I would say similar to something like David Lynch, but without the horrific, scary.
Without the nightmare.
Without the nightmare, exactly. But he's in the same realm almost, right? That poetry realm is kind of like an unconscious place where things generate or things kind of come out. And I've heard him talk about that too, that he'll generate stuff and he doesn't even think about it really. Right. And then later he goes back and he goes, oh shit, what, I didn't even realize.
I wonder if he does meditation like Lynch did.
Probably.
Seems like that kind of person.
Yeah, seems like it. I didn't get deep into his biography, but
I didn't look at his biography at all.
Yeah, I mean, he's an interesting guy for sure. He's also in a very good band. Like he's
a great musician.
Yeah, he's in that band Squirrel, right? And they did the music for Only Lovers Left Alive, I think, which was really good, right? So, he's in a band. He knows a lot. He hangs around with a lot of rock stars and stuff like that, right? So. He's very music as well. He's also done documentaries on Iggy Pop.
He did one on the Stooges that came out recently, which I never saw. And I think I saw his doc about Neil Young.
Yeah, he did one on Neil Young for sure. Yeah. I remember seeing that, but I don't remember it being very good.
I remember liking it. But really, we're talking about his fiction films mostly here. So after Broken Flowers, he did a movie called The Limits of Control, which
I haven't seen that one.
That's
the one I haven't seen.
I think I might have, but I don't remember it. And it's often, a lot of people think it's his worst movie.
Yeah.
So it hasn't really come up.
Yeah.
And then after that one, he did Only Lovers Left Alive, which was the vampire love story, which I haven't seen since.
That came out in 2014.
Yeah, I would have seen it earlier. Full disclosure, we distributed the movie in Canada, so. But I wasn't. It didn't blow me away.
I feel
you liked it more.
I feel completely the opposite. It blew me away.
Yeah,
I loved it. I thought it was. First of all, I thought it was absolutely gorgeous. Like the movie itself was just so beautiful. I loved their characters. I thought their love story was very real, and it was very logical. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to go down logical, but okay, like it was to me, it made a lot of sense the way they were, after, because it was about the ennui, if you want to use that word, of being alive forever, right? The boredom of their lives, right? The kind of you've done it all, nothing excites, but they still have each other. They still have their love for each other, which is sort of like, when he's talking about love, it's a very different kind of, it's a connection. Because here's the things I loved about it, that their love story, first of all, they weren't even together for like a long time. In the beginning, they're in separate countries, right?
Right, okay, I
remember those beautiful like ceiling shots of her lying on the carpet.
I do. Yeah. I'll let you talk more about it because I don't remember it as well.
So it's like there's two, like Tilda Swinton and Loki.
Tom Hiddleston.
Loki. Tom Hiddleston. Yeah, they are. So they're vampires, and they live. They're obviously a couple, but they are not together, and it's never explained. It just seems to be part of how they live now. Where like a lot of the time they're not together for a long time. Like one's going off on their own, and there's this idea of the freedom you have to give your partner especially after a certain amount of years together. You have to give each other a lot of space and a lot of space to do their own thing. You don't always want to do everything together, right? So it doesn't mean you don't love each other. It's just have, and part of that love is to also go, well, they got their life, I got my things. It's like they kind of have that where it's like there's no ownership of the other, right? So I thought there was a lot of smart things about love in it, and I also just thought they were hilarious and great characters. Like I thought they were fun. They looked great. it was very stylish.
Looking film with costume.
To me, it actually worked. Maybe a lot of people found like the sort of vampire thing a little tired, right? And I do too. But and maybe they felt that it was like pretentious or whatever.
Yeah, I think I remember feeling kind of that way
because those people are arty, right? Like the Tom Hiddleston character is like a musician. He's like almost like a alternative, like Kurt Cobain-ish style, long hair. He's got his guitars and he's
like
always
Lestat.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a Lestat. Yeah, there is a bit of an Anne Rice-ish quality to it, but it's again, it's not Anne Rice's world.
No,
right? Anne Rice is like 100 years earlier. 1800. She's very stuck in that 1800s thing.
It was very gothic, right?
Yeah. Whereas this one wasn't. It was like more Asian or something like that. Yeah. Anyway, I liked it. I thought it was I loved it. I thought it was great. Like I'd like to see it again. So,
I did love his next film after that, which was Patterson. Which we also distributed in Canada.
Yeah, Patterson.
Patterson is beautiful film.
Yeah, I had never seen it either. I hadn't seen it.
I haven't rewatched it,
right?
But I remember it quite well.
I remember people talking about it at the time, and whenever I'd say, "Well, what's it about?" They said, "What? He's a bus driver." It's like, "Well, that doesn't sound good," What is this, The Honeymooners? And then I was like, "Okay, whatever." And so when we decided to do the show, it was the first one I watched, and what a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful film.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen.
It's
so touching and it's so reflective. It puts you in that beautiful space, and there's also a lot of problems with the character. Like, at the same time that you love him, right? You also see how disconnected he is from reality,
from everybody around him. So he also has this routine. Is very much, he drives his bus, which of course is the same route over and over again, as one is when one's a bus driver.
Yeah, it even starts before that. It starts in the way he wakes up every morning.
The way he wakes up every morning
with his beautiful wife, who he loves, and they have sex, or she tells him about a dream.
Yeah,
and then he goes to work.
But even his connection with her is almost a bit odd because
it's very odd.
If I remember correctly, she wants to be a country singer.
She has like a bunch of
Very
different.
funny.
She's like one of those people, reminded me a lot of me, where you're like, I'm going to try this next. This. Oh no, this is my. She's looking for herself, right?
Right.
And he, in a way, so he just responds to her beauty, and to her loving kindness towards him, and that makes him be very accepting and non-judgmental towards her, and that's what he needs to create, right? So, you know, because he won't publish, right? Like, so the story Patterson is basically, and this is an interesting doubling. He's Patterson, his name is Patterson, and he lives in Paterson, New Jersey. So there's two Pattersons here, right? So sometimes you're talking about Patterson the man, sometimes you're talking about Patterson the place, right? So, and then there's a whole thing about twins. Anyway, we'll get to that. But the story is basically about Adam Driver. He's this young guy who drives a bus. He's got this wife, you know, who's a bit ditzy and stuff like that, but you know, is very lovely, sweet, you know, and beautiful, and a foreigner. And he goes, he has this very ritualized life where he goes to work and he drives a bus, and he's in his bubble because, you know, the bus driver's in a little cubicle in the front, you know, and he listens to conversations that people are having on his bus. And that inspires him, right? Like towards,
he's a poet.
He's a poet, and he goes to these beautiful falls every day, and he writes poetry. And his wife keeps telling him to publish, and he won't, right? That's the basic story, but it's very much about, like, you know.
Well, he also after his shift. He also, on the way home, he always stops at the same
off
bar,
and
has one beer and talks with the other denizens of the bar,
right?
But then there's always something that happens that shakes up that routine. So I think, if I remember correctly, at the bar somebody gets violent.
Yeah, it's that guy who comes in after that girl, and then he has to take him down.
Yeah,
and that's the only time that you realize something about his past, that he was, you know, that he was a Marine. He was a Marine. He was, and Adam Driver really was a Marine. Yeah. So. Yeah, that comes like later. That's after the third or fourth time he goes to the bar, or third time.
Yeah, something like that. And then I think the bus breaks down, so that throws a monkey wrench in.
Yeah, things keep breaking down. That's true. Like it starts with his mailbox always being off center every time he comes home.
Oh, right.
He comes home and on the mailbox is always crooked. Right. And then later you see it's that dog, because remember, he doesn't like that dog. Remember, he says, "I don't like you." Remember. Because she has this a bulldog, right? And they have a contentious relationship. But the thing is, it's and people rightly say this, it's kind of like, you know, a beautiful film about nothing, right? It's like, I mean, but it really isn't about nothing. That's what I'm saying. It's really about that, what we've been talking about all the way through, that guy who's an outsider masquerading as an insider in a sense, right? He's kind of living the life of a regular Joe, but he's a poet.
But he's got this internal world that nobody knows about.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
And that's the thing. It's like, you know, you don't know. It makes you go like, I wonder what that guy who's driving the bus, whether he's like that too. Like, you know, sometimes that happens to me. Do you ever, like, you know, just walking around or something, seeing people, and you just think, well, I wonder what their life's about, right? Like, what's inside their heads, right?
Yeah, that's people watching.
Yeah, people watching, but also just wondering curiously, like, what's their darkest thought? What's their biggest dream?
What do they do today?
Or what were they thinking about, right?
Right.
And that's the thing. Like, you don't know who's a poet, right? You don't know, you know, who could be like a gifted this or a gifted that, or has what talent or whatever. He's basically saying you can't judge anything on the sort of accoutrements of identity, and to do so is to live a kind of like inauthentic existence. That's why, in a sense, the wife is kind of in that dilemma.
Right.
She's living in that world, right? Of, you know, if I buy the guitar, it'll change me, right?
Right. She's not sure who she is.
It's the opposite. It's the external change to the internal change, whereas, like, it really has to come from internal to external, right? Yeah. I mean, doesn't have to, I guess, but I think he's making a contrast of those things, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved it. It's, you know, and then after that, he did his last movie that's come out was The Dead Don't Die. It's about 6 years ago. Yeah.
So another movie that, I mean, this one really sort of galvanized people. Like polarized people, I should say. A lot of people didn't like it.
Not great reviews.
Yeah, I liked it.
Box office, I think, was okay.
I have to say, I liked it. I liked it a lot. And
not me.
I know. Well, that's because you're dumb. But, you know...
Not as dumb as you. You're really the dumbest.
How are we
going
to figure that out? Who's dumber?
Well, we'll ask our listeners.
Can we have a dumb off of some kind?
Yeah. Okay. I guess Dead Don't Die is kind of like his zombie horror movie.
Yeah.
Kind of.
It is, but it's so meta. It's the most meta of his movies I've ever.
True.
It reminded me a lot of that part in. It reminded me a lot of that part in Spaceballs. Remember when they go, "Hey, let's rewind the movie," right? And it's that kind of meta thing that he does in this movie, because at a certain point he goes, "Well, I read the script, right?" And they're talking about the script as the actors, as the characters, right? And then they never. So like, there's these. It's interesting because it stays day, right? That's how they start to realize something's fucked up in their town. Bill Murray's a sheriff. Adam Driver is his deputy. Chloe Sevigny is also a police officer.
Selena Gomez is in it.
Yeah, and it's like a very like small, sleepy town, right? And basically, like they figure everything kind of sort of dawns on them really kind of slowly, right? It's there's no big like, oh my god, there's no scene like that. Yeah. There's no like big like huge like.
There's no
scary. Set pieces.
Nothing scary. There's no. Well, the ending, I guess, a bit because
it's got some gross scenes in it.
It's a zombie movie.
Yeah, the Iggy Pop, scene is a little gross, right? But yeah, I think people kind of didn't understand what he was going for in that movie, and I don't think I fully understand either. But there is something else going on there. There's a lot of talk about the movie, but not in a way where it's like, hey, we're making a parody of us. It's not that simple.
It's not like Blazing Saddles. Yeah.
No, there's something about the connection that they have towards the material in this way that is, I don't know. I'd have to see it again. Like I have to actually figure it out.
It felt like a very unfocused to me when I saw it. Again, I haven't seen it since it came out.
Yeah, I don't think it was unfocused. I think it was just I think it just offended a lot of people who are horror fans, maybe rightly so, because he's really going into something sacred here, and kind of, people who like zombie movies and horror films, they have a certain code, I guess. This is a good one, this is a bad one, and because there's like 700 zombie movies, right? So I think it just really offended people because it's so.
It doesn't follow the rules.
It doesn't follow any of the rules, right? So it has all the trappings of it being a scary movie: the small town, the sheriff, the zombies, the weird things happening. But yeah, it's just like, it's not scary, and it's also kind of just like everybody just kind of treats it like, oh wow, okay, and there's a kind of only Steve Buscemi's character is a little like shoots that guy at the door and stuff, right?
Right.
There's funny. It's funny. I find it very funny, and
it was funny. I do remember that,
and also very like melancholy in some weird way,
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah. I'd be curious to see it again as well, but.
What's interesting in that movie is that they keep every time they turn on the radio, the song Dead Won't Die, or Dead Don't Die, it keeps coming on the radio, and they keep going, what is this, the song? This is that song Dead Don't Die from the movie. They talk about it like, again, the way they slip in and out of the meta conversation is so seamless that you miss it, It's not like
it's not a big deal.
They never break the fourth wall. They never kind of indicate that they're doing it.
They don't wink at the audience.
No winking. Yeah, exactly. And it's odd because you're like, whoa, what does that have to do with anything, right? This is just a straightforward story about zombies, isn't it? No. There's something else going. It's about the structure of... I think there's something about... I think this movie, more than anything, the zombies reminded me a lot of Romero's... Dawn of the Dead. Day of the Dead. Which one's in the mall?
Dawn of the Dead.
Dawn of the Dead. Mall. Yeah, it reminded me of that because there's scenes where zombies are congregating at certain stores.
Yeah.
And trying to get into those stores and stuff, and I think again visiting familiar places. That whole idea is kind of in this movie too, and there's some kind of anti-capitalist concept there, or anti-authoritarian concept
Yeah,
there.
that's a very Romero thing.
Yeah, I think that's where he was going more than anything, rather than with some kind of like cosmic sci-fi concept, right? Yeah.
Yeah, or mystical.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was Jarmusch's last film, and then he's got a film coming out soon called Father, Mother, Sister, Brother, which is going to play the Venice Film Festival.
Like this year?
This year?
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Well, it's going to play the festival this year. I don't know when it's going to come out in theaters.
Do you know, and you know anything about that?
Well, nothing that is not on Wikipedia. So that's
Just
all I
read the
have.
Do you think anybody out there
It
knows?
is
That you just coming up with this off the top of your head?
It's a comedy drama anthology film, so it's
he's
back to that
to
structure.
Interesting.
But what a cast! Kate Blanchett, Vicky Krieps, Adam Driver, Bian Bialik, Tom Waits, Charlotte Rampling. So,
wow.
So there we go. Looking forward to that.
Always love Charlotte Rampling.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what I'm talking about. But I like Charlotte Rampling. Although she had some weird problem a few years ago. Didn't she make some anti-Me Too thing? Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't a Me Too thing. She said something degrading about
women.
About actors of color.
Oh.
It was around the Oscars So White campaign.
Oh, she was against that.
And she was
right.
like, well, if they were good actors, they'd win the awards.
Ooh.
And everybody was shocked. Everybody was so shocked that I'm like, well, she's an old British lady. What else is she going to say?
Yeah.
But anyhow, it's pretty awful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess the last couple of things I want to mention are, I don't know whether you caught this, but in Patterson, one of the people one of the scenarios he's listening to in the back of his when he's listening to people on his bus is between these two, this sort of young man and young woman, and what you realize, if you really know movies anyway, is they're the two kids from Moonlight Kingdom, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Moonrise Kingdom. Yeah.
Moonrise Kingdom, exactly. They're the same actors, right?
I had no idea.
Yeah, and so that's an interesting thing to do, right? And then I did a little reading about that. He does make a lot of references to Wes Anderson, right? And he does it in a way that highlights the differences between the two of them, but they occupy a similar area, right?
Sure.
They use a lot of the same actors. They use a lot of they're both considered literary, but whereas
the deadpan dry wit.
Yeah, exactly. The oddball characters, all that stuff, right? The costumes, almost, right? But the Wes Anderson take is the opposite, right? It's full of adornments, right? And extra layers and layers of beautiful, tapestry and set design and amazing camera work and symmetry and all that stuff.
Whereas, the artificiality of the sets sometimes.
Exactly.
City. Yeah.
Whereas Jarmusch is the exact opposite, right? Equally beautiful. Mm-hmm. Equally beautiful, I would say, which is the fascinating thing, right? Equally beautiful, but in a totally different way. Completely unadorned, falling apart, to decay, right? A lot of
natural environments,
homes like apartments, right? That kind of thing. So, he's. It's like they're in the same. He's acknowledging that, okay, I'm here and Wes is here, and we're both kind of parallel filmmakers in the same. He was first, and I think was influential even on Wes Anderson.
Oh, for sure.
But I think that what he's saying is, there is a kind of. I don't think he's putting him down. I think he's saying. It's kind of like an homage to the fact that there's some connection between the two of them as filmmakers with a similar heart, but with a different approach.
I mean, I'm not a huge Wes Anderson fan, and I would say
I don't know how you say such things.
I would say definitely Jarmusch is a greater artist and more. His films to me are more beautiful than Anderson's.
Okay, that's fair. You can have that, but you sound a little bit like that Diane Keaton character in Manhattan. Like, Mozart is so overrated.
Wes Anderson is no Mozart. Believe me.
Oh, I don't know. Well, I don't know what you mean by that.
We should do a Wes Anderson episode where I just trash him, like beginning to
Okay,
end.
but if you're gonna, we can do that, no problem. But here's the thing: if your argument's going to be like, well, I just don't personally like it, you can't argue with that, right? So you have to come up with a real.
It's not my thing.
Yeah, I just find it boring. No, you got to come up with some real reasons.
All right.
Real reasons.
I always have reasons. I have good reasons.
Do you have reasons for $1 Million Baby?
Yeah, I do. We should do an episode about $1 Million Baby.
Okay, I'll meet you there.
It's a great film.
I'll meet you when I'm not doing that one.
No, I know.
It's a terrible movie.
It's a great film.
Terrible. I don't want to watch like Hilary Swank in yet another movie getting her fucking head beaten to death. Okay, like why is that her thing in her early career? Like just die by being
ingrained
beaten to death.
misogyny of cinema at the time, perhaps.
Well, first she was like a trans person who got killed, right? And then
it's awful.
Yeah, and also it's like, nah.
Okay.
Clint Eastwood and what's his name?
Morgan
Freeman. Like it's just too cheap. Like how can you even take it seriously? You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, come on, man. Morgan Freeman is a cartoon of himself.
Time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, what are we doing next?
What are we doing next? Well, I had the idea. We talked about this. Movies that were panned by critics and or box office failures when they came out, but have been completely reassessed.
Perfect. Let's do that.
So,
okay.
If anybody out there has any ideas on films that they want us to talk about, just find us on social and
you can find Tom. I don't want to hear from you.
I want to hear from you.
Yeah, Tom wants to hear from you because he's creepy. He'll hear from anybody. You know what I'm saying?
Boy.
Yeah. But yeah, don't call me. Don't contact
so we're
me.
gonna think about that one.
All right.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you very much, and
thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you,
Okay.
and we will see you out there in the dark.
How will you see me in the dark?
Night vision.
Oh, you have the night vision goggles?
Yeah, Sounds of Alarms.
You're one of those creepy guys who gets like army shit.
It's from my army surplus down the street.
Yeah.